Hello and welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show. I'm Nazia Iqbal and here's a look at the stories for the day. India's first auction of 5G spectrum, which kicked off on Tuesday, has fetched the government much more than what officials were expecting. Telecom Minister Ashwini Vaishnav described the participation from telcos as strong. About one-third of the total spectrum by value put up for auction has been bought by top telcos on day one. We bring you an analysis on what this response to the auction means.
India's much-anticipated 5G spectrum auction received record-breaking bids worth 1.45 trillion rupees by the end of day one after 4 rounds, exceeding analysts' expectations. This inched up to 1.49 trillion rupees by day 2 in 9 rounds of bidding. Telcos are not done yet. There is more action left. The previous record was set in 2015 when the exchequer garnered rupees 1.09 trillion from the sale of 4G airwaves, equivalent to about 1.5 trillion rupees today. Given the ample supply of spectrum in this year's auction, the bidding across bands has been largely at reserve prices. Surprisingly, the expensive 700 MHz band, which went unsold in the last 2 auctions because of high base price, received 10 MHz pan-India bid covering all 22 telecom circles, costing 39,270 crore rupees. The base price of the band was reduced by 40% this time. Analysts say the buyer is most likely Reliance Jio. The mid-frequency 5G band of 3.5 GHz and the high-frequency band of 26 GHz also witnessed strong demand. On day 1, Jio likely bid for the higher spectrum worth 81,000 crore rupees, followed by Bharti Airtel at 45,000 crore rupees and Vodafone Idea at 18,400 crore rupees. Both Airtel and Jio may have bid for 100 MHz of spectrum in the 3.5 GHz band across all circles, while Vodafone Idea could have gone for 50 MHz in 17 circles. Adani Data Networks may have picked up 26 GHz spectrum pan-India, spending as much as 900 crore rupees.
From an overall perspective, it seems to be a very participative auction. The sub 1 gig bands are able to penetrate thick walls and provide services indoors. 80% of the data gets consumed indoors. So I think from that perspective, 700 is a very, very useful, very potent spectrum, which probably Jio understands and they want to invest behind that spectrum. And this will eventually put pressure on Airtel as well to compete on quality of customer experience. If the launch is basically to raise a tick and say, yes, I've done it, then the amount of capex required could be very nominal, because most of the networks are IP ready. And now the government is giving E-band on administrative prices, which will allow them to augment their wireless backhaul as well that is required. E-band will serve a good short to medium term solution, but eventually E-band will have to be complemented with a lot of fiber. But if you are looking at new use cases which will be applicable to low latency Internet of Things, then you need to build a very dense network, because these applications cannot work with any dark spots. That requires a very big amount of investment. Essentially, E-band will probably provide a bridge, but eventually you'll need fiber backhaul. And India has a long way to go on that. And the second is the number of towers. I can go by the example of China here. China has about 1 million 5G sites today, and they are talking about trebling it. India has only about 250,000, 260,000 unique sites to an operator.
The government intends to allocate the spectrum by August 14th, with the rollout expected in the coming months. To speed up the launch, the Telecom department provisionally allotted E-band spectrum to telcos for their 5G backhaul requirements.
So India has previously dragged its heels on kickstarting 5G auctions in the country. This is well known. That has made us a laggard. So in that sense, it's finally official. So that itself is a success. In terms of what was raised, it has to be regarded a success. There is substantial demand for 5G and interest from the operators in deploying 5G. So can 5G be deployed on 700 megahertz? Of course it can, but it doesn't have the same economies of scale and device availability that the 3.5 gigahertz band does. In theory, if they have this 10 megahertz nationwide, then they can extend 5G to suburban sort of areas. Most operators have taken an incremental approach where they start with sort of the big urban areas, dense population, high traffic, or industrial zones and or venues. Will new towers be required? Not necessarily, because in the short term, a telco can leverage the existing, ground-based and roof-based towers and add a new 5G base station for coverage. Wherever you need to basically densify the network, they're going to have to add small cells and other things. So you will see new sites, definitely. The backhaul is going to carry the traffic from the tower or the base station back to the core network. Right now, backhaul is a mix of mainly microwave and some fiber. Roughly about 35% of the towers in India have fiber connectivity, which is quite low compared to global norms. They can also complement it with, besides microwave, other wireless technologies that will run over the E-band.
While many Indians may well get to see 5G by the end of this year, experts say the existing infrastructure on access and backhaul is inadequate to provide a world-class 5G experience in the near term.
सब अच्छी दिख रही हैं यार, कौन सी खरीदूं?
ये तो वही बात हुई, 4000 शेयर्स लिस्टेड है, कौन सा लूं?
वो तो सबसे आसान है।
तुझे 5 पैसा नहीं पता?
अब तो सबको पता है। 5 पैसा पर है 4000 स्टॉक्स की रिसर्च, टेक्निकल टूल्स और इन्वेस्टमेंट आइडियाज। डाउनलोड 5 पैसा नाउ।
अब तो सबको पता है, investing made easy and rewarding with 5 paisa. Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
The World Bank has appointed Indermit Gill as the chief economist of the World Bank Group and senior vice president for development economics. Our next report delves into Gill's rich contributions to development economics, his vast experience at the World Bank, and what he could bring to the table in his new role.
Indermit Gill is the second Indian to take up the coveted role of Chief Economist at World Bank after Kaushik Basu, who served from 2012 to 2016. Other prominent Indian origin economists, Raghuram Rajan and Geeta Gopinath, have served as chief economists at the International Monetary Fund, the sister organization of the World Bank. World Bank President David Malpass believes Indermit Gill would bring invaluable expertise and practical experience to the multilateral institution. Gill himself feels he has big shoes to fill for his new assignment. Gill brings with him 2 decades of operational working experience at the World Bank. In his previous stint from 1993 to 2016, he had held several leadership positions, including Director for Development Policy in the Office of the World Bank Chief Economist and Regional Chief Economist for Europe and Central Asia. Gill is respected for his thoughtful leadership, having spearheaded the influential 2009 World Development Report on Economic Geography. Gill is also regarded for his pioneering work in developing the concept of middle income trap to describe how countries struggle to achieve higher income status after hitting certain income levels.
He's not your run-of-the-mill World Bank, neoclassical economist sort of specialized in development economics. He has a very interesting background. He did his PhD from the University of Chicago. with Gary Becker and Robert Lucas, who are both extremely right-wing conservative people. But Gary is an economic sociologist, and I think Indermit has captured some of that in his journey. He then worked for the ILO for a while, International Labour Organization, which is not by any means a particularly right-wing institution. And therefore, he has the kind of exposure to heterodox economics that I cannot think in recent history any other World Bank chief economist has. So he has worked on labor economics, on macroeconomics, on political economy, my subject, the middle income trap. And that is why I call him a complete economist.
A student of Nobel laureates Gary Becker and Robert Lucas, Gill holds a PhD in economics from the University of Chicago, along with an MA from the Delhi School of Economics. He was a professor at Georgetown University and the University of Chicago, and also served as a non-resident senior fellow in the Global Economy and Development Program at the Brookings Institution. Contrary to the popular opinion of economists, Gill is said to have a good sense of humor and loves an argument. His colleagues say Gill is passionate about the state of his profession.
He's very passionate and committed about teaching and research, and especially trying to foster young Indian economists and public policy makers. He and I have both been involved quite closely in the making of the Kautilya School of Public Policy in Hyderabad. And I was very impressed with the amount of time and energy he was willing to give, even at odd hours of the night from Washington, D.C., to help us craft the curriculum, talk to students, interview faculty, etc. So he is an Indian who cares about India and the state of the profession in India.
According to Arvind Virmani, former chief economic advisor to the government and India's representative to IMF, Indermit Gill has two distinctive advantages. He is an insider who has risen through the ranks and therefore knows the bank inside out and can more easily help to raise the quality of World Bank advice. Also hailing from an emerging economy, Gill has a better understanding of the conditions and constraints under which emerging market developing countries operate and can better guide development of policies more suited to and sustainable in their condition, Virmani told Business Standard. The immediate challenge for Gill is the high stagflation risks facing advanced economies, and the implications for emerging markets is highly uncertain. Gill would do well to bring certainty on how we look at the economic future of the world and also make progress on green and climate finances.
यार
मत पूछ यार,
फिर से स्टॉक्स में फंस गया।
तो स्टॉक्स के साथ बॉन्ड्स, इंश्योरेंस, गोल्ड में बैलेंस कर।
इसमें बहुत तामझाम है।
तुझे 5 पैसा नहीं पता?
अब तो सबको पता है। 5 पैसा है ऑल इन वन अकाउंट। डाउनलोड 5 पैसा नाउ।
अब तो सबको पता है। Investing made easy and rewarding with 5 paisa. Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
A complete economist, Indermit Gill's new position at the World Bank will give him the opportunity to nurture more young Indian economists and public policy makers at the world stage. Back home, the telecom stocks are back in the limelight amid the spectrum auction by the government. But are they worth your hard-earned money? Let's find out in our next report. Spectrum auction has brought focus back on stocks of telecom service providers. According to reports, Sunil Mittal controlled Bharti Airtel, Mukesh Ambani owned Reliance Jio, and Gautam Adani have collectively bid around 1.45 trillion rupees to buy 5G airwaves on the first day of India's largest ever spectrum auction that began on Tuesday. The bidding and demand seen on the first day itself was 80% higher than the government's internal estimates of 80,000 crore rupees. According to a Jeffries note, telcos may look at the 700 MHz band more closely as it is the primary band for 5G globally. It is available pan-India with its price similar to the 800 or 900 MHz band and got provisional bids worth 39,270 crore rupees on day one of the auction. The note also pointed out that the spectrum supply is nearly 20 times higher in 2022 as compared to 2021, mainly on account of the 5G band auction availability. Analysts say the spectrum spent by market leaders Reliance Jio and Bharti Airtel is significantly higher than expected, requiring the industry to grow faster in order to justify such large investments. According to ICICI Securities, higher spectrum investment has been seen to depress the return on invested capital for the industry globally. We remain cautious on the higher investments by Indian telcos. However, Edelweiss Securities says that given the improving cash flows amid rising revenues from data, the telecom companies will be able to manage the annual payouts for spectrum. In a note to Business Standard, it says these bids translate into 12,600 crore rupees annual payout versus our expectation of 8,430 crore rupees. Considering strong and improving profitability, we do not see this as much of an issue. At the bourses, Bharti Airtel and Vodafone Idea have underperformed and are currently trading below their respective 200-day moving averages, which indicates underlying weakness.
Both telecom stock, Bharti Airtel and Vodafone Idea, are trading beneath 200 days moving average, and as long as they stay under it, it is advisable to avoid these stocks based on the technical charts. For Bharti Airtel, 200 days moving average comes to 703, and for Idea, it is at 10.50 levels. One could see sideways consolidation if benchmark indices BSE Sensex hold their recent lows and they trade above it.
On Thursday, the markets will react to the outcome of the US Federal Reserve's decision on interest rates. Futures and options expiry of July series later in the day too will keep traders busy.
अब क्या किया?
शेयर्स में ट्रेडिंग।
तुम्हें 5 पैसा नहीं पता?
ओए, अब तो सबको पता है। 5 पैसा पर मिलते हैं रिसर्च टूल्स, पोर्टफोलियो एनालिटिक्स और इन्वेस्टमेंट आइडियाज भी। डाउनलोड 5 पैसा नाउ।
अब तो सबको पता है Investing made easy and reporting with 5 paisa. Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
While analysts point at higher than expected spectrum spends by Reliance Jio and Bharti Airtel, the telecom industry will be expected to grow faster to justify its large investments. But it can be a tricky situation if a country falls into a middle income trap. A middle income trap is an economic development situation in which a country attains a certain average income and gets stuck at that level, failing to graduate to a high income group. While some experts don't believe this theory, others swear by it. Let's know more about this trap. In a recent interview with Business Standard, London School of Economics professor Nicholas Stern had rejected the fears of some experts that India might be caught in the middle income trap. Stern said that India was nowhere close to it. A middle income trap is a scenario where the country's economy is unable to transition to the higher per capita income levels. Low-income countries often tend to transition faster to middle income levels, driven by low wages, cheap labor, and basic technology catch-up. However, only a few countries manage to achieve high income status. One reason behind this could be middle-income economies often hitting sustained growth slowdowns after years of strong growth, resulting in stagnating incomes. Inequality and income distribution are also key reasons for the middle-income trap. There is no consensus around the theory of middle-income trap. It was and is still hotly debated among many economists and policymakers around the world as to whether such a trap really exists. Historically, some evidence suggests that Latin American and Middle Eastern countries suffered middle-income traps for at least 4 or 5 decades. According to a World Bank report, out of 101 middle-income countries in 1960, only 13 countries achieved high-income status by 2008 based on per capita income level relative to the United States. The most recent examples being Brazil and Mexico, which are touted to transition to developed economies but fail to achieve the same success as Japan or some countries in the Eastern Europe. If needed, a middle-income trap exists. Economists argue that after rising to a matured middle market economy, policymakers need to be innovative, strengthen institutional capacities, and look for renewed sources of growth rather than depending on the traditional growth engines to avoid such traps. In India's case, a few years ago, top economist Rathin Roy had warned that growth is sluggish at lower middle income levels, with per capita income stuck between $1,000 and $3,800. He had warned that India's growth was primarily driven by the demand generated by top-tier 100 million people, and the same is not sustainable going forward. But Nicholas Stern says sustainable infrastructure, energy transitions will invoke strong investment and drive India's growth going forward.
I'm backed by the nation's trusted bank, SBI, the banker to every Indian.
Well, that's all we have for you today. We will be back with more news and analysis in our next episode. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.